Hello there. This is a impromptu stream just working on a project that might be interesting because it requires converting a furniture item. So this is set up for furniture in IMVU. Requires converting it into a furniture room. So basically what that means is enable the backdrop and the furniture. So we've got all the bits and pieces that we need to convert this or to export this as a room, not a room, furniture item. So everything is parented to the root node. So we have our meshes all set up and parented to that, which means that we can export it and import it into IMVU as a furniture item. So that is the object set up as a furniture item. Where's the, oh, there it is. That's the full screen one. So that's the furniture item object. So we've got our custom poses apart from the seat nodes. Those use standard seat nodes. Custom poses. Oh, that one's gone a bit wonky. That is mirror 3. Ladder, table, shoe rack, mirror 1, 2, 3. That should be mirror 3. So there we go, mirror 3. Although that looks like the swinging on the mirror. But so there are 8 custom poses. What's that one? That one's gone a bit wonky as well. It's so annoying when not Blender, when IMVU does this. What is that? That's table 1. Table 1. Often means having to close the scene, close create mode, and reopen it. Because it gets its cache in a twist. Where's the browser gone? Tailors. It's something to do with the way. Yeah, that's gone wonky for some reason now. It's the bane of creating for IMVU. Well, okay, so that's the furniture item anyway. So what we're going to do, or what we have to do with this, is convert it to a furniture room, and that means, so we can do this 2 ways. We can either open the, so we don't need that, that's all right. We can either open the furniture file, not the furniture file, the room file, the room starter file with all the bits in. Let's just copy paste the starter file into le chat. Yoink. And yoink. So you can either open the starter file and append all the components from the furniture item project into the furniture room project. And depending on the furniture item itself, that might mean bringing in quite a lot more objects than would be needed or necessary. So it's often easier just to do it the other way around. So let's just clear this. New 31. So that's the furniture. And what we're going to do is append the core components of a furniture room into this project. So we'll bring them in so that we have all the bits that we need. So file, append. We need to find the starter file, double click. So append means that we're basically drilling down into the starter file, so it behaves essentially like a zip file or an archive. So we want the object folder again. Object, and then we want to select the bits that we need. So we need the camera. We don't need the sitting poses because we've got those already. A couple of the ceiling nodes. A couple of the floor nodes. Some of the wall. Whoops. We don't need the handles, helpers, and we need node room, omni, that's the light. Don't need the mesh, setting nodes. So we then need skeleton, and then we don't need anything else. So all we need to then do is just append those into the scene. So that's brought them in. We need to just do a bit of quick organization. So now where's the menu item for this? I am looking for, oh, there it is, collection. So we want to move to collection. So object, collection. We don't have layers anymore. Move to collection. So shortcut key for that is the M key, M for martyr. It'll bring up a pop-up. We don't have a collection that we want to use for this, so we have to create one. So click new collection. That brings up this pop-up box, which we can't, oh yes we can. Let's just rename that room parts. Okay. So it's done that, and we should have a new group at the bottom with all the bits that we've just added to the scene. So grab that, just reorganize this, move it to the top. Oh, that's the seat nodes. So backdrop, hide that. So we've got all these nodes, so we can now hide. Those are the seat nodes. And that just leaves us with the room skeleton info that we need. So let's set up backdrop, furniture mesh. So what we'll need to do, we're going to have to, and this is often the case, so the skeleton.room, the node that's selected, is at grid center. and so are all the other nodes relative to it. But the furniture item, so let's hide those, isn't. So we have to, where's the root node? There's the root node. That controls everything, so we can just grab that, select top, grab, move, and position that. View, sidebar, let's check its position. That's all right. Because what this means is that all the seating is now positioned correctly relative to the room items. Because if we now enable the room parts, so there's skeleton.room. So, and this is where it gets tricky, so let's just save the file. File, save as 32. So what we've got to do is uncouple or unparent all the furniture parts from the root node and then reparent them to skeleton.room. And this is why we want to use collections, because it allows us to hide, can't really see it, oops, it allows us to hide certain elements whilst we manipulate and modify things. So we can hide all of that whilst we manipulate the scene in order to get it sorted out for a room. So what's the best way of doing this? I think just hide the room components. Select everything. Root, and then clear parent. Where is it? Parent, clear parent, keep transform. We want the nodes to keep their current positions. If we don't use this, that some of them might reset to their original position. Whoops. Object. Where's it gone? Parent, clear parent, keep transform. So now the root node controls nothing. So what we can do is hide that and possibly the points. Yeah, so let's just hide those. Enable the room parts. Right, so that's okay, so select everything, unhide, select skeleton.room, double check, and then parent everything to that. So object, parent, object, object, and then again we want keep transform. So that then means that that controls all the room component, well, not the room components, just basically the background, the mesh, the dummies and the seating. So everything is parented to that. So all we have to do now is set up the item properly as a room. So camera parts, where's the camera parts? Oh, there we are. So we want the camera we want that aligned to the initial pose or the initial avatar position. Make sure we're in global orientation for this. So this is the camera and this is the camera's target. So we're looking at the scene from that direction. So we have to position this node at the avatar's head, because the camera should be, generally speaking, the camera is set up to look at the avatar's, I think it's eye level by default. So we select those two nodes and just position them. So the origin point, that's this little dot where this text appears. So that is more or less in the center of the head. What we want to do is just try and, yeah, that looks about right. So we can see the origin point is more or less aligned to the avatar's eye level. So that means when the scene opens, it'll be looking directly at the avatar. So move those as a pair. The distance between them can be changed, but don't change the orientation. Their orientation with respect to each other. So if we switch to local, we'll see why. Whoops, where is it? Or is it normal? No, it's local. So if we note the orientation, the z-axis points backwards for this node, and it points backwards for that node. So they are not facing each other. They're essentially facing away from each other. And if you move them in local or normal, this is what happens. They move relative to their orientation as individual objects, not the scene. And do that. So we always want to be in global. So that's set up. Shift the light. Move that. It's very large, so this doesn't really have an effect in IMVU. It just makes it easier to handle in IMVU if we just change the radius so that we can see what is going to be primarily lit within the scene, But to actually change the intensity of the light, we don't change the power or the radius, we change color. So essentially we make the light darker, and that reduces the perceived perceived impression of the brightness of the light. And that is connected to node.room. So all your lights, you don't really want to have too many of these in the scene or in any scene. So Omni1, that is connected to node.room, and then node.room is connected to skeleton.room. Not quite sure why they've got that set up that way. Because in theory, the lights can be connected to furniture nodes if the furniture nodes are animated. So it's almost redundant really in some respects, but always just initially adhere to the hierarchy or the default hierarchy. Right, so let's hide the seating because we need to set up the furniture nodes. Whoops. Local right, so for wall nodes, well, for furniture nodes generally, the z-axis or z-axis is the direction the node should be aligned or orientated to with respect to furniture. So this being, well, because we brought this in from the furniture starter file, there was a wall that corresponds to these two nodes. So they're sitting against that wall, pointing inwards. So what we can do with these now is just rotate them, position them where we want them. It's 90. View top. Where's the other one? And we can have them at odd angles, like so. But just make sure you get that right, otherwise you'll have the furniture that's associated with them clipping oddly through the walls. In fact, let's and to get this right, we want to be in local orientation. So you're going to be toggling between global and local depending on what it is that you're doing, so that you can move or manipulate the selected object appropriately. So let's duplicate that. So for example, we want to move this one just across here to this wall, but in local, that's the orientation that we have to move it in. So switch to global, move it across, and back to local. Duplicate. Otherwise you have to do that. Whoops. May want to put those where I was putting them before originally, which is above the chairs, because that's where the arches are. Alternatively, you can just press the G key and that gives you free manipulation. Put that one above the mirror. Need to double check the names of these nodes. So we've got an extra 0. Double click, delete, double click, delete. So that's the walls. Just hide those. I want the floors nodes. These can generally stay aligned to the grid. Generally speaking, if you've got your scene set up correctly, so the scale is 100, so that's your viewport overlays. Scale should be set to 100. And everything else, clip start, that's okay. And what that means is your furniture node layout can generally stick to the grid. So each major division is the equivalent of, it's not actually 1 meter, but it might as well be 1 meter or 1 unit. And that's sufficient space for your furniture items to be laid out. But what we can do with these, switch to local. So with furniture floor nodes, Z points upwards. Now I can't remember the orientation of these, because what you could do if you really wanted to, let's say for the sake of argument, furniture drops into the scene facing that way. So on node 1 that might be appropriate, on node 2 it might also be appropriate. For these nodes near the wall, what we might actually want to do is rotate them. So we rotate them 90 degrees so that the furniture item is aligned to the wall rather than the floor. But I can't remember off the top of my head which way around they point. But that's Shift D to duplicate. Just basically want to put a node under each of these elements. So your main furniture grid is going to be the major subdivisions. But within that you can do what's called feature interest, or focusing on feature interest. So you don't necessarily always need to stick to the grid, because what we want to do is allow for the placement of furniture items like glasses, cups, vases or vases on these feature elements. So we can place the nodes to take advantage of those parts. And again, we could rotate them. Let's just rotate these like that and see how that works. I think we'll see which way the furniture drops onto those. And those should be, are they already connected to skeleton.room? No, they're not. So what we have to do with those, let's just add a couple more. Hold Control to snap to the grid as we're in the 3D view. And what we can do with these is drop these under the cabinet. And another one under the thingy rack. This is a small scene, so we don't need to go overboard. And then there's the ceiling nodes that we've got a couple of. Again, don't need too many. Duplicate. Duplicate. Right, so file names or object names 6, 5 and 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And with our furniture nodes, we can have, so it's 01, 02, 03, all the way up to 09. Beyond 09, we can do 010, 011, 012, and so on, or we can just do the plain numbers 10, 11, and onwards, and it would be the same as when you get to 99. It'd just be 100, 101, 102, 103, etc. But just make sure, double check, spelling's all correct. That's all right. So let's hide the furniture mesh stage. Yep, select all the furniture nodes. So unhide the walls. Furniture. And skeleton.room, shift click. Parent object, keep transform. So skeleton.room now controls everything. Backdrop, furniture. Right, save this, save as 33. Yes, there have been 33 versions of this project. Hi Magic on YouTube. There is a let me just copy. There is a weight painting tutorial video that will help with that. As you can imagine, doing clothing, there's a couple of... Where's the one for the skirts as well? I haven't done a top tutorial yet. Where is that? See those links. The top is in the works, but as you can imagine, you can probably appreciate that it's quite a tricky thing to do whilst providing all the information that's going to be needed to make the top work. But it is on the to-do list. Right, so back to the room. One thing we need to do, we need to change the vertex group name. That needs to be skeleton dot room, because this is now a room, not a furniture item. These are case sensitive. Room. Edit mode. Select all. Double check its assignment. So we should be about ready to test export this. Let's double check everything is linked up. We want seating. Need to make sure that everything is being controlled or is essentially linked to. Nice to meet you too, Magic. Whoops. Need to make sure that everything is parented to skeleton.room for rooms, and that that node, when selected and moved, controls everything or is moving everything. And that's a good, a simple way of double checking your parenting relationships. So let's just save a version of this as well. And then export all of it. So select all. Highlight skeleton.room. Then we can export everything. Export Fbx. 34, right, so selected objects. Everything else is okay. Geometry, that's all right. Armatures, always disable add leaf bones. There are no animations with this. So disable that and then export. Oh, and also, as this is using custom poses, double check that your what's that one for? We have an odd one out. That should be picture 04. This is a good job did that. Double check your node names. And that if you have any custom poses, which this does, these are all custom poses. So your seat nodes have to have a custom append at the end to identify them in IMVU. So that's picture 04. Okay, that's that one. Right, okay, well let's save that again. Save as, not save as, just save over the top. Select everything. Highlight skeleton.room. Double check. And then export. Just save over selected objects, apply modifiers, disable, that's alright, export. Right, so create mode, derive new product, and we want rooms and furniture, we want a room. That'll give us the brick wall backdrop. Now we just need to import our object to replace all of this. So Fbx Import and load Fbx. This is number 34. There's 34. Open. So it's got our skeleton, well, select skeleton root. With this being a room, there should only really be one. If you've done this, if you set the room up correctly, there should only be one skeleton option given. So select that. It'll list all the meshes that are connected to it, and we've included the helpers, which we can remove once we've imported it, so don't worry about that. Configure. Apply scale 0.01. Disable, always disable rename room nodes. No idea why that's there actually, but so disable these, we don't need them, so uncheck. Want our furniture.mesh, stage.mesh, so mesh IDs 0, 1. So 0 replaces the backdrop. It's got our materials. It's automatically deselected the materials associated with the avatar because we don't need those. No animations, so that's fine. So import. Get some overriding messages, that's alright. Import changes. Apply changes, and there. Oh, that's rather nice actually. Kel Surprise. So it's automatically assembled everything for us. Meshes. Oof. These are TGA images, so let's just, there's no difference. So the originals are TGAs, which are often used in games, but IMVU obviously prefers JPEGs and PNGs. So when you're working with Blender, or when you are working in Blender, if you can work with TGA images, do so. Because all you need to do then is save them out or export them as JPEGs. IMVU does understand TGA images, but it will convert them to JPEGs, I think. But working with TGAs tends to slow IMVU down a little bit. Yes, Magic, you can do that. Just ping JazzCat or CatsBits. So once it's auto-assembled everything, let's that needs to be self-illuminating. So everything else is okay. We can then replace these with our JPEG versions. So couch. Walls. Walls, we don't need any blending. Floor. lamps. We have to do this twice because we're replacing the TGA. So we can already see that just selecting the material slots for this mesh, which is the stage of the background, is quicker than it was before. So if we now switch to furniture, doing the same thing, we can see that it's slower because IMVU doesn't like. It will work, as I say, it will work with TGAs and it will convert them, but it doesn't particularly like them. So it's best to replace them with JPEGs. And some of them it really doesn't like. Shelf. That's the bench top or the tabletop. Shelves. Bench sides. Cloth. That's the cabinet. Oh, shoe rack. Dummies. Don't have to change that. Carpet. And a mirror. And I think, but don't quote this, if you have a TGA and JPEG version of the same file, exactly the same, but just different file extensions, I think IMVU will it'll load in what's associated with Blender, the Blender project, not what it wants to see. So it's pulling the texture information from the file, the Fbx file. So you're always going to have to do this and or. Let's just assign those. So there we can see that the camera is set up so that it's staring at the avatar. So next, we need to load in the poses. So let's just save this file, save as. that means loading in a second Fbx file. Fbx, load Fbx. So we're using exactly the same pose file as was used for the furniture item. So this crops up every now and then. Let's save this, save. This crops up every now and then. Where is it? Oh, that's right. I was going to say, I've completely forgotten what I'm going to say there. A senior moment, as they say. Yeah, so this crops up every now and then, depending on how you are exporting your pose files. So we've got this warning here that says Fbx file contains no meshes. Now, ordinarily, that might be a problem because depending on what the Fbx is that you're importing, you might actually want a mesh to be there. But for poses, we don't need there to be any mesh data. We're not exporting the avatar mesh itself. We don't even need the skeleton itself. All we're after is this, all the stuff that's usually in the action editor. In other words, all we're wanting is the pose data. So if you select, whilst you're in pose mode, if you have one of the bones selected of the skeleton, you don't need to select all of them, but if you have one of them selected and you export the Fbx, it'll export all the bits that we need for a pose, but it won't include any mesh data. And that'll mean when you bring in the Fbx, IMVU will issue this warning about the mesh, the file not containing any meshes, which is okay. It is a warning, but just be aware that you may not need to have any meshes depending on what it is that you bring in. So if it's just an action or a pose or an animation that's to do with the avatar and you get that warning, generally means that the file's going to be okay. So import changes. So it's brought in all the animation poses. So we want to disable that one and that one because we don't need them. Import scale is 0.01 always. Again, make sure rename room nodes is disabled. Don't need anything else. That's all right. Import. Import changes. Apply changes. Now, because we've brought in what is essentially another skeleton into the project, it resets the scene basically to use the skeleton that we just brought in. So we have to always go to the config tab and reset our project, which is root node %2f skeleton.room, and that resets. Oh, we've also got, we can change the ambient light 127. So it depends what sort of gentleman's tailor or lady's tailor, gentleman and lady's tailor, what sort of ambience you want. Don't want it to be full bright. Right, so we've got the texture set up, we've got the meshes set up. So we need to add the actions now. Add stance dot Taylor's ladder ladder.pose. So this is a static pose, so we're going to loop it, loop one frame, replace, disable gaze, apply changes, and that is this pose all the way over here. Add another stance dot Taylor's table 1. So these are triggers. These are automatic triggers. Stance dot and then whatever comes after that is the custom equivalent, the custom trigger equivalent of stance dot idle. So the trigger word or the corresponding label that's assigned at the end corresponds to the name of the node that's, well, in this case it's down here. So table 1, table 2, then there's others around the room that we then set up. Avatar, same ensemble, table 1, replace. Loops 0, loop start, whoops, loop start, loop end, apply. So that's table 2. Oh, that's gone wonky. We'll have to check that. Yeah, have to check that. So that'll sometimes happen when you're exporting a lot of files, a lot of poses from the same file. Stance dot Taylor's table 2. One, two. So that's that pose. Oof, that arm's gone all wonky. See, that's really weird. That's pretty nasty. Wasn't doing that before. So we'll have to check those poses. This is the furniture version. Have to check those poses. Because what's happened there is that the bicep bone has been, it should actually be down here, but the bicep bone has been rotated instead of the shoulder bone. So to move the arm, you want to move the shoulder bone round, not the bicep bone, because if you do the bicep bone, you'll get this happening. It'll collapse the arm. And you want to avoid that because it's rather painful. Stance dot Taylor's shoe rack 1. So shoe rack 1, loops 0, frame start 1, frame start 2, So that's that one. Grabbing something from the shelf. Stance.tailors. And the name is case sensitive and always starts with an uppercase letter. So uppercase T for in this case, tailors. Shoe rack 2, 0, 1, 2. Whoops. So there's the second one. Perusing the goods of the shoe rack. And then it's the mirror poses. So the poses for these 3. So stance dot tailor mirror 1. So 0 loops. That loops the pose infinitely. So if you put a different number in there, it will loop it however many times the number is here. So 100 would loop it. So 30 frames a second. IMVU operates at 30 frames a second. So that would be 3 seconds-ish, 3 and a bit seconds of the pose before it reverts to the standard. Well, it'd go back to the T pose actually, but so that's the first one. Have a look in the mirror, sir. Or madam. Stance dot tailors mirror 2. I say, this is a jolly rather nice suit. Obviously we don't have mirror reflective surfaces in IMVU. So a cheap way of doing that is just taking a screenshot of the scene in Blender and just pasting it into your image. So you could be a vampire now. Vampires don't have reflections. And the last one, stance dot. Hello Eva on YouTube. Stance dot tailors mirror 3. So that's have a look in the mirror, sir, madam. And that's, we insist, madam, sir, please do look in the mirror. Oh, that's gone wonky as well. Hip leg's gone all funny. So that foot should be at the bottom. So I'll have to take a look at those poses. It looks like it's not captured the hip bone position, but everything else is fine. So let's put, let me just save this, save as. Let's add an actor. Oh, I see. There we go, stand in front of the... There we are, sir. Looks rather marvellous. I think your head is rather too small for your body, sir, if you don't mind me saying. That just goes to show how much the IMVU avatars have changed. So we've got the default one, and then obviously one of the newer versions, and the proportions, it's like Mickey Mouse. So Mickey Mouse on the right, and then I don't know what that would be on the left. So just standard seats and the custom poses. I do like those pair of invisible shoes. Yeah, see, it's not collapsed quite as bad there. But using the default avatar, that arm has collapsed quite bad, so I have to take a look at those. Which one, sir? The purple one or the blue one? Or the green one? Or maybe the gold one? I'll get it myself. We're not insured for that, sir. But this is going to go into eventually, aside from it being a standard room for classic, this may be usable as a replacement backdrop, because we can set these as, I think they mentioned it in one of their streams, that we can change the backdrops in Studio. So instead of having the white room that burns your eyes, we might be able to, if they implement this from when they mentioned it on stream, if they implement this, we may be able to have our own custom scenes. Ooh, speaking of which, let's check. So we've got our little widget, and we can move this around to see which way our furniture nodes point. So that one has rotated. That one has rotated, but it's not pointing the... So I guess, do we want... let's drop a normal seat. So when you are making your rooms, if you want to be super duper proper about it, let's just drop that in. If you want to be super duper proper about it, rather than just dropping in. Yes, see, so that one's, come on. That one's aligned. That one's aligned. That one is, but that one isn't. So we have to swizzle. We have to swizzle the nodes. So in not in IMVU, in Blender, when we set up our furniture nodes, we have to make sure. So let's just hide seats. Skeleton. So it's these two. We want local. So we have to make sure that the green arrow points in to the room. So in Blender that corresponds to, that means the normal. So the green arrow is pointing backwards then. Wasn't sure about that. So rotate that 90. And of course this would then mean having to re-export. Oh, it's this one. That then means re-exporting the scene once you've made your adjustments. But it's worth doing to make sure that you have your room set up properly. So do we have a picture? Because what we can do, that'll do. So we can check our wall nodes. That's okay. Whoops, that's the ceiling node. Might have to raise those higher. So back into Blender. Whoops. But everything else looks okay. So the item itself is slightly proud of the surface. Let's see if we can find another one just to double check. Could have sworn I had some pictures, some other pictures I should say. Oh, that'll do. Oh no, that's ground. Is that a picture? Oh, that's a floor. Yeah, see, nothing. Oh, that's a flaw. People don't make proper wall-mounted items these days. They just stick things on the floor. Is that a picture? No, that's actually a balloon. The icon looks like a picture frame. So well, you get the idea. Just use your furniture items to go around the room once you've imported it and check the furniture node orientations. So this little widget is helpful for that. If you want it, just message me on IMVU. But all the other nodes look okay. And then we have the ceiling nodes, which nobody really seems to care about these days. Poor little ceiling nodes. Right, so that was an exploration of converting a furniture item, furniture item. So this is a furniture version, so there'll be two versions, the furniture file and then the room version of this backdrop scene, which with these as a furniture room you'll be able to then just drop things in the, because some people are like that, they like the details. It allows you room to drop things into the shelves, onto the storage, the showcase, and onto the tables, onto these little side cabinet thingamajigs. Oh, go away, tool. Yes, so I'll have to have a look at that. In fact, let's have a look at that now. So we've made our adjustments to this. Right, so save that. So this means it was standing, so it's these two. Right, so for the pose, so we've brought everything, appended everything into the pose file. So what we're doing is having to align. So we've got our poses already set up, which we've just previously exported. So we want table 1. So that's table 1. But we want to make sure that that is positioned correctly relative to the node that we want. So that's this node, seat node. So select all. We want this node to be our focus, but we need to move that as a group. And this is where it gets confusing because the avatar faces this way. The node currently is facing that way, so we have to move this node to the center and then rotate it so that it points in the same direction. And we want to be moving the whole lot as a group. So we keep everything relative to the entire scene. But unfortunately, when we are doing custom poses, you have to keep doing this for each pose. So if you do a pose, export it and find out, as we've just done, that one of the poses or the bones broken in some way, we then have to reset the scene so that the avatar stands properly with respect to the pose that we're creating, so that we can inspect it properly. So that's set up okay, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there. So copy that. So just selected bone. Paste. So that's the same. So if you need to move the position of the avatar, don't use female 03 master root. That must always stay put, because that's what IMVU uses to anchor the avatar in the scene. If you need to move it, just use pelvis node and move the position of that relative to where you want the avatar to be. So if you have a walking pose, for example, if the avatar needs to walk, you would walk the avatar in terms of moving it using pelvis node. So you would have it walking off however your animation needs to be. Don't use female 03 master root. That needs to stay put. Well, that's okay. Let's double check the arm is all right. And of course, whenever you make adjustments, whenever you make adjustments, make sure to copy the pose from one frame to the other. So we've cleared the animation data that's in the bicep and just moved the shoulder bone, which is that tiny box. But that's now changed the keyframe data for those two keyframes. So as we've posed it at keyframe 5, what we can do is just select that bone, or the two bones, because we changed those, copy those specifically, so copy pose, drag the slider so we can see there's a slight difference, and just paste that into place over the top. Hi Ali, thanks. So now those two keyframes are the same, which we need. But that might make the shoulder go a bit wonky. So don't be afraid to spread the movement across multiple bones. So copy those, paste. And then we've got the reset. So that one looks okay. I'm not quite sure why it rotated. Right, so check this one now. Hide. Select all. Well, we're not creating poses. What we're doing is checking poses that are exported to this scene. So we've just been setting up this room and furniture item. We've been setting up this room with some custom poses, exported to 2 FBXs, or that was done previously. And then we've brought them in. Oh, that pose we need to check as well. Hi, Pamela. And we're just going back into Blender to check some of the poses because they haven't exported correctly. So we've got some really nasty distortion at the shoulder bone here. So we're going through the Blender file and we've got this odd tilting for some reason. We're going through the Blender file just to check. And we've just done one pose, so we're now cleaning up the second one. So we have to do the same thing again, move the standing spot to grid center. Like so. Well, Blender doesn't use skins. Everything has to be manually weight painted. Oh no, hang on, that bone. So that one is rotated that way. Whoops. So that's table 2. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the bicep bone. So exactly as was discussed, when you are moving the shoulders, must have missed that in the project. Whoops. Where's my thing gone? Oh, there we go. Don't move the bicep, or don't rotate the bicep. So we've got our pose selected, or the action. We have to clear this because we haven't moved the shoulder bone. We rotated the bicep bone. So select and pose, clear transform, all. That resets the bone. So we can see how much that's bad. Clear transform, all. So we want the shoulder bone. And we use that to twist and point. And we can also, again, use the clavicle to spread the pose across a chain. because the bicep, generally speaking, you only want to spin it. You don't want to be rotating that. So that's the clavicle, shoulder, and bicep bones. Select those three, pose, copy, and then move that to, oh, we can see how the well, it won't be your clothes. So Ali's saying my clothes sometimes break because they move these bones wrong. It won't be your clothes that are moving the bones wrong. It'll be that your clothes are moving in relation to the bones incorrectly. Probably because there's a weight painting issue. So you need to double check your weight paint values, or your if you're using 3D Studio Max or another application, it'll be the skins or the way the mesh deforms, whatever mechanism that is, depending on what app you're using. So you'll have to check that to make sure that it's not distorting your mesh unduly. Right, so that's the pose we want. That's the one we want to get rid of. So pose, paste. So we now have those two the same. And then we've got the reset. So that one's okay. And then the last pose we need to check is the one that's all the way over here. So hide that, select the bits, and then rotate the scene. So that needs to be that way. Center the origin. Center the node or align the node. Unhide. This is mirror 3. Yes, I see. It's I'm not quite sure what it's doing there. So it's not kept. So that's twisted. That's fine. So basically the avatar is standing on the foot of the mirror whilst they're, readying to rotate it or spin it around to whack the character, the client on the chin or something. But they're standing upright. But it's not captured the position of the leg, which should be down here. So it looks like there are yes, it's still that's Deliverances sticker. That uses Flash, so that may be dying soon because IMVU and Adobe no longer support Flash, or they're ending support for Flash in December, I think. So you may have to learn Blender. But it's pretty straightforward to make poses. Got a couple of videos about that. Where are they? Well, there's actually quite a lot of videos about poses, but start here. That'll get you started. But the Deliverances sticker works pretty much the same way as the pose file. The bones are set up to basically look the same as well, so you should be able to transfer across. You just do the same thing. You're selecting individual bones and maneuvering and moving them into position. Right, so we've done that. Pose, copy, pose, paste. Toes. What's going on with the toes? So clear rotation. Oh, I do hate it when it does this. I'm not sure if this is a bug per se, but this is one of the things that you have to watch out for when you are working on poses. For all intents and purposes, the toe bone isn't changing in terms of its position across the two keyframes, aside from when we reset. But yes, it's dead easy to make the poses. Well, it's a visual medium, Ali, so you shouldn't need to let... Well, if you can understand what's being said now, your English is pretty good. This is one of the things that you have to watch out for, is the scale values that are sometimes inserted into the keyframes. And it'll do it at some keyframes, so we've got it at 5, but not at 1. So the solution to that is just to select the criteria. I don't know how you pronounce that word. Yes, Deliverances sticker is quite tricky to work with, but it's served its purpose for a very long time. It's just unfortunate now that coming December it looks like it's going to be dead because Flash is no longer going to be supported by IMVU. Well, I don't know if it's going to be supported by IMVU. I think they mentioned something about it, but Adobe is kiboshing it. They're getting rid of it. So now we have the toes. The keyframes are the same. That's just something to watch out for. So if you get an incomplete transition, so you don't get this yellow bar, you get this blank space, select the bone expand the rotation, so that's scale and location and rotation. I don't know how you pronounce that word. That's really annoying. And then you'll have the scale options, and it'll generally be scale that's the problem. Just select them and then delete them. But with that done, it's then just a question of exporting all the poses again and then reassembling the project. I'll do that offline because it's just a repeat of what we've just been doing. Save. And I have to call it quits for now as well. So that was just a sort of impromptu stream about setting up a furniture item as a room and then assembling and all the associated issues that you have to keep an eye out for, I should say, when you are using Blender and using custom poses. So we shall call it quits there, and I'll get this all sorted out off screen and then uploaded so that it can be used. But that is a backdrop. So the next video, I have to do a bit of work on this, but the next video will be assembling all of this, might be assembling all of this in Studio with normal maps and shininess, and they'll call them specular maps, shininess maps. So there is that, which may, whether this is of interest, showing how to make normal maps from images. So you can use images to make normal maps, but there is a right way to do it. If you do it the correct way, you'll get some pretty decent effects. So maybe doing that. I may do that in the next stream. So we'll take a look at making normal maps and assembling all of this in Studio. Right, so thanks for watching, watchers. Thanks for commenting. Ali, Pamela, Nascence, Magic. I think there was somebody else. You know who you are if I've missed your name out. Oh, and Gaff. Oh, and somebody else. Oh, no, we don't do buying followers. Mr. Person that's posting on Twitch. Yeah, sorry I missed your comments, Gaff. It's quite an effort to try and monitor several devices at the same time. But yes, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for lurking, lurkers. We know you're there. And we shall see you on the next stream where we maybe take a look at Studio. Right, bye for now, everyone.